On top of the statewide amendments and propositions, we also have local measures we'll need to vote on in Colorado. Since I'm a resident of El Paso County and the city of Colorado Springs, those are the measures I'll be talking about. If you live outside of El Paso County, you'll have different measures to vote on, so you'll want to do research on those. If you want more information about the statewide proposition and amendments in Colorado that we'll also be voting on, I have another video that walks through those. You can find that on my Facebook page, my YouTube channel, or my website, mattradcliffe.com. Some of what I'm talking about in this video can be found in the handy-dandy El Paso County Notice of Election on Referred Measures broadsheet you should be getting in the mail if you're registered to vote. Some of these issues are not in the broadsheet, but are on the sample ballot that you can find at the El Paso County voter website. If you don't know if you're registered or don't have a plan for voting, I implore you, go to iwillvote.com and it will get you connected to all of the right places to register to vote, to find a ballot drop box, to make a plan for voting. That's the most important thing that we can do this November. On to the issues. Some of these I won't be voting on because I don't actually live in the jurisdiction, but I'm going to talk through through what I would do if I were, mostly because they're all in the broadsheet. Also, I'd rather have a plan for how I'm going to vote on an issue and have it not appear on my ballot than be surprised when it comes time to vote and have no idea what to do. So the first one is City of Colorado Springs Ballot Issue 2A, and I apologize, these ballot issue languages are even worse than the statewide ones. Without imposing any new tax or increasing the rate of any existing tax, and to provide adequate municipal services after the economic disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, shall the City of Colorado Springs be permitted to retain and spend up to $1.9 million, the amount of city revenues received in fiscal year 2019 above the 2019 fiscal year revenue and spending limitations, solely for the purpose of public safety, for fiscal year 2020 to collect, retain, and spend the full amount of city revenues received from all sources, and for fiscal year 2021 and thereafter to collect, retain, and spend the amount allowed by revenue and spending limitations, which shall be based upon the total annual revenues received in fiscal year 2019 and property tax revenues received in 2020, adjusted in each fiscal year beginning in 2021 and thereafter only for inflation and city growth occurring in the prior fiscal year as provided by charter, which continues to limit future revenue growth, all as voter-approved revenue changes and exceptions to any constitutional or charter limitations that may otherwise apply. Wow, that's a mouthful, isn't it? And this one is a mixed bag for me. The fact that this is all earmarked as solely for public safety leaves a bad taste in my mouth because almost half of our city budget already goes to public safety. And frankly, the police department public information team has misrepresented actions during the protests this summer to categorize them as more violent and destructive than they actually were. At the same time, CSPD downplayed violence and menacing toward protesters, including a group of armed white nationalists that created a sniper nest to provide overwatch on the peaceful protests below. All of this is a mostly successful effort to turn public favor away from peaceful protests centered around police brutality and the murders of Devon Bailey, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor. Just last week, I witnessed an individual exit his vehicle and start swinging a golf club at protesters. CSPD's response was to call the event an unlawful gathering, roll up their cars, and disperse the protesters. They let the man who was swinging the golf club get back into his car and drive away. But don't get it twisted. I think police are necessary, and I think individual police officers tend to be some very good, hardworking people. I just think there should be provisions that acknowledge some of the reform folks in the city are asking for, especially when they're asking for money for public safety. All of that said, the Colorado Springs Strong Mayor Charter, combined with popular support of the police, means there is not a world where CSPD's budget gets cut by $1.9 million, which means those cuts are going to come from other city services to make up for any shortfall. Our roads already suck. We're just now getting to the point where we're actively addressing stormwater needs. And last time there was an economic downturn, we had to turn off all the streetlights, and subsequently they were all stolen. I don't want to see any of that happen again. It should also be noted that this measure is only necessary because of Tabor requirements. And as I mentioned in my last video, those requirements prevent our duly elected representatives from governing. If this measure is rejected, the amount refunded back to each tax household is around $8 total. This is another example how an amount that is mostly insignificant to us as individuals collectively amounts to an important sum of money for our government to run and operate the way they need to. So for City of Colorado Springs ballot issue 2A, I'm voting yes. The City of Colorado Springs ballot questions 2B and 2C. These ones are super confusing because the language is almost identical. At the risk of oversimplification, this harkens to one of my more fundamental beliefs. We live in a representative democracy, so when we elect representatives, we need to give them the power to govern. These two questions essentially center on, do we want our representatives on City Council to have the power to make deals related to publicly owned parklands, or do we want them to only have the power to send land deals for us to vote on at our expense? City of Colorado Springs ballot question 2B. Sorry again for the legalese, but this is the way they're written, so I feel like we should hear it. Shall the charter of the City of Colorado Springs be amended to add section 11-80 thereto, requiring that specific conveyances of city-owned parkland only be permitted upon referral by a supermajority of not less than 7 members of City Council to a vote of a majority of votes cast at a general or special election of the qualified electors of the city, and providing exceptions to the election requirement only for conveyances which are judicially ordered, result from eminent domain, title disputes, or regulatory actions, consist of leases, temporary permits, easements, or conservation easements, and de minimis conveyances, provided that if this charter amendment and another charter amendment which substantially pertains to conveyances of city-owned parkland are both approved by voters at this election, only the measure receiving the most affirmative votes shall become effective. Mouth. Lots of words. This ballot question, if approved, would require a supermajority approval from City Council and a majority approval in a vote from citizens of Colorado Springs for a land deal to go through. I think this is redundant. If we vote for City Council, then we're voting for them to represent our interests. Adding the extra step of special elections is expensive from a direct cost, over $300,000, and an opportunity cost. What is City Council not focused on if they have to focus on a special election? So for City of Colorado Springs ballot question 2B, I'm voting no. City of Colorado Springs ballot question 2C, deja vu, shall Article 3, Section 3-70 of the Charter of City Colorado Springs be amended to require that specified conveyances of city-owned parkland only be permitted upon the approval of not less than a supermajority of 7 members of City Council, and providing exceptions to the supermajority approval requirement only for conveyances which are authorized by voters, judicially ordered, result from eminent domain, title disputes or regulatory actions, consist of leases, temporary permits, easements or conservation easements, and de minimis conveyances, provided that if this charter amendment and another charter amendment which substantially pertains to the conveyances of city-owned parkland are both approved by voters at this election, only the measure receiving the most affirmative votes shall become effective. This one sets the procedure to where only a supermajority vote of City Council is needed to pass a land deal without the requirement of the special election. I think this saves our community money and allows our representatives to do their job. So for City of Colorado Springs ballot question 2C, I'm voting yes. Important note that if both 2B and 2C pass, then only the one with the most votes will be put into place. On to things that likely won't be on my ballot, but again are in the broadsheet and the sample ballot. The first one is Town of Palmer Lake ballot question 2D. In order to save money on the cost of publication, shall the town be authorized not to publish in the newspaper its proceedings related to payments of bills, contracts awarded, and rebates allowed, with such information instead being posted to the town's official website? For me, when we're facing less tax revenue and expanded need for services, it's important for governments to find ways to cut costs. So assuming the town, assuming the town's official website isn't an inaccessible disaster, I would vote yes. The next one is a long one, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time for that, but it's a Town of Monument ballot issue 2E. Shall the town of Monument sales and use taxes be increased $1.4 million in 2021, the first full fiscal year dollar increase, and by whatever additional amounts are raised annually and thereafter by the imposition of an additional sales and use tax of 0.5%, half of 1%, increasing the town sales tax and use tax from 3% to 3.5%, for the purpose of providing dedicated funding for the exclusive use of the Town of Monument Police Services, Town of Monument Police Programs, and Town of Monument Police Facilities, without cutting or reducing current Town of Monument Police funding levels, including law enforcement operations and operational expenses, essential police capital maintenance and equipment, purchase and replacement of officer safety and emergency response equipment, and officer training and compliance requirements, commencing January 1, 2021, and thereafter, shall the Town of Monument be entitled to exclusively collect, retain, and spend the full revenues from such tax increase without contractual, statutory, or constitutional limitation or condition, including local intergovernmental agreements, Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, Colorado Revised Statutes Section 29-1-301, or any other law as it currently exists or as it may be amended in the future without limiting in any year the amount of other revenues that may be collected and spent by the town for the exclusive use of the Town of Monument Police Services, Town of Monument Police Programs, and Town of Monument Police Facilities, and further provided that the town manager shall annually report to the town board of trustees the expenditures demonstrating the exclusive use of the funds for the Town of Monument Police Services, Town of Monument Police Programs, and Town of Monument Police Facilities, for which the revenues from the tax increase have been designated or used in the preceding calendar year. Huge mouthful, asking for a lot of money for the Town of Monument Police, which I didn't realize the Town of Monument was so high in crime that they needed an extra $1.4 million for their police. You've all heard my stance on funding police departments without including specific provisions to address police brutality. But I don't live in Monument and definitely won't be voting on this issue, so I won't take a specific stance. I will just encourage anyone who lives in Monument and will vote on this issue to look at the current police budget, current police performance, and current crime rates to decide whether a tax increase is necessary for the purpose of expanding police in Monument. The Town of Monument ballot question 2F. Shall the Town of Monument's regular elections be moved from the first Tuesday of April in each even-numbered year to the Tuesday succeeding the first Monday of November in each even-numbered year? My general stance on an issue like this is that the less confusion for voters, the better, and this would align Monument's elections to coincide more closely with the National Election Day, so I think generally this is a good idea. Colorado Springs School District 11, ballot issue 4A. Without increasing existing tax rates, shall School District 11 be authorized to collect, retain, and spend the full revenues that may lawfully be received by the district from any source, including without limitation all grant monies and all other monies lawfully received by the district from the state of Colorado or any other source, beginning with fiscal year 2019-20, which is the current school year, and continuing thereafter with such revenues to be collected, retained, or spent as a voter-approved revenue change, and an exception to the limits which would otherwise apply under Section 20 of Article 10 of the Colorado Constitution or any other law. D11 here in Colorado Springs is facing some dramatic fluctuations in budget, and I personally think that every penny that goes into public schools is very well spent. So I would vote yes on this one, but I live in School District 2, so I don't think I can vote on this one. Miami-Yoder School District Joint 60, ballot question 5A. The Miami-Yoder School Board has requested to eliminate term limits as permitted by Article 18 and 2 of the Colorado Constitution. Shall the present and future elected school directors be authorized to serve in unlimited terms of office, eliminating the limitation on terms of office imposed by Colorado Constitution Articles 18 and 2? I don't have a strong opinion on this issue. I will say that generally term limits prevent graft, which I would think the main purpose of eliminating term limits is because someone might be looking to spend some contracts towards their friends, but I don't know the specifics about the school districts, and I don't have a strong opinion because the opposite might be true. They may have trouble finding people. Tri-View Metropolitan District Ballot Issue 6A. Without increasing the rate of the district's current mill levy, shall Tri-View Metropolitan District be authorized to repurpose revenues derived from up to 7 mills of its debt service mill levy through a general operations mill levy in collection year 2021 and each year thereafter to fund, if necessary, continued delivery of the district's basic operations and services, provided that such authorization shall be suspended in any future calendar year in which 1. The district's board anticipates receiving sufficient sales tax revenues from the town of Monument, Colorado to fund its budgeted operations and service expenditures, or 2. The total mills levied by the district would otherwise exceed 35 mills to enable the district to pay debt service on its general obligation bonds. And shall the repurposed revenues hereby authorized constitute a voter-approved revenue change under Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution and an exception to the annual property tax revenue limitation set forth in Section 29-1-301 of Colorado Revised Statutes. This ballot issue reads like a Tabor requirement to keep and use these tax dollars to prevent the loss of essential services. This is similar to Colorado Springs Ballot Issue 2A, so I would probably vote yes. We're about to enter deja vu land again. Donald Westcott Fire Protection District Ballot Issue 6B. Shall Donald Westcott Fire Protection District be authorized to increase or decrease its current and all future mill levies to maintain revenue-neutral property tax revenue to the extent possible if, on or after November 3rd, 2020, Election Day, there are changes in the method of calculating assessed valuation of one or more property class, including but not limited to a change in the percentage of actual valuation used to determine residential assessed valuation due to Article 10, Section 3 of the Colorado Constitution, commonly known as the Gallagher Amendment, or for any other reason such as action by the legislature, so that, to the extent possible, the actual tax revenues generated by such mill levies are the same as the actual tax revenues that would have been generated had such changes not occurred. And deja vu time. Donald Westcott, Fire Protection District, Northern Subdistrict, Ballot Issue 6C. Shall Donald Westcott Fire Protection... I'll do that again. Shall Donald Westcott Fire Protection District, Northern Subdistrict be authorized to increase or decrease its current and all future mill levies to maintain revenue-neutral property tax revenue to the extent possible if, on or after November 3, 2020, Election Day, there are changes in the method of calculating assessed valuation of one or more property class, including but not limited to a change in the percentage of actual valuation used to determine residential assessed valuation due to Article 10, Section 3 of the Colorado Constitution, commonly known as the Gallagher Amendment, or for any other reason such as action by the legislature, so that, to the extent possible, the actual tax revenues generated by such mill levies are the same as the actual tax revenues that would have been generated had such changes not occurred. It's the same issue, two different similarly named districts. And these are fire protection districts that responded to the Black Forest fires a few years ago. So all I'll say is this seems like a backdoor to keep the Gallagher Amendment alive and well for the Donald Westcott fire protection districts, and should it be repealed in the statewide election. If this were an issue I was voting on, I would dig in way deep to see who benefits from keeping the Gallagher Amendment alive there. Like what, and why. All I'll say. All right, Northeast Teller County Fire Protection District Ballot Issue 7A. Without increasing taxes in 2021, shall Northeast Teller County Fire Protection District be authorized beginning in 2021 and annually thereafter to set the mill levy at a rate sufficient to generate the tax revenues levied in 2020, as such amount is adjusted annually thereafter for local growth, for general operating and other expenses necessary to maintain current staffing levels and high quality service. This seems like a reasonable approach to funding the Northeast Teller County Fire Protection District. Again, an issue I'm not voting for, but this seems like a likely yes for me if I were voting. Calhan Fire Protection District Ballot Issue 7B. Shall Calhan Fire Protection District taxes be increased up to $285,000 annually for collection in calendar year 2021, and by such additional amounts raised annually thereafter by an ad valorem property tax mill levy imposed at a rate of 6 mills for the purpose of meeting operational costs to maintain response times for fire protection and emergency medical services, attracting, training, and retaining firefighters, emergency medical technicians, and paramedics, and replacing emergency equipment and vehicles that have reached the end of their service life, including air packs, bunker gear, and ambulances, which increase shall be in addition to the mill levy currently imposed by the district. And shall the revenue from such mill levy increase constitute a voter-approved revenue change and an exception to the limitations set forth in Section 29-1-301 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. That's Section 29-1-301 is the section of the Colorado Revised Statutes that addresses mill levies that made a lot of appearances there. But this seems like a reasonable approach to funding the Calhan Fire Protection District. And to summarize, for the issues that I will definitely be voting on because they will be on my ballot, City of Colorado Springs Ballot Issue 2A, I'm voting yes. City of Colorado Springs Ballot Question 2B, I'm voting no. And City of Colorado Springs Ballot Question 2C, I'm voting yes. Things that I'm not voting on but aware of and could possibly end up on my ballot. Town of Palmer Lake Ballot Question 2D, I would vote yes. Town of Monument Ballot Issue 2E, I would do more research. Town of Monument Ballot Question 2F, I would vote yes. Colorado Springs School District 11 Ballot Issue 4A, I would vote yes. Miami Yoder School District Joint 60 Ballot Question 5A, I would do more research. Triview Metropolitan District Ballot Issue 6A, I would likely vote yes. Donald Westcott Fire Protection District Ballot 6B and Donald Westcott Fire Protection District Northern Subdistrict Ballot Issue 6C, I would do more research. Northeast Teller County Fire Protection District Ballot Issue 7A, I would likely vote yes. And Calhan Fire Protection District Ballot Issue 7B, I would likely vote yes. What an election. What an election. Lots of stuff to vote on there, and just remember that the most important thing we can do is to vote. That's it. So make sure you go to iwillvote.com. If you don't have a plan, make sure you make a plan, and make sure you do some research. Let me know in the comments section what you think, and we'll be happy to talk through that. Thank you so much for watching.